It's time for some panoramic film photography. What could possibly go wrong? So I finally got my hands on a 6x17 panoramic film camera. I've been searching for one for ages, trawling the internet trying to find one. The ultimate sort of panoramic camera in this format is ideally the Fuji GX617. They're great cameras, all the Linhof 617, but the prices are just ridiculous. You search on eBay, you can see the prices are up £3,000 and upwards, and they're very hard to come by a decent model as well that's in good condition. So I did some research. A few cameras came up, including the ND, I think it's the ND617 with the mobile phone on top, which I wasn't that keen on. Now this is a Chroma Six 17. Great company. I will say before I carry on, I'm not being sponsored by Chroma. I've bought this myself, so this is all my own equipment. So it's an impartial kind of review and a test shoot with this. But yeah, I picked this one up with a 90mm lens cone, 2 film backs. There's a few other bits and pieces which I'll go through in a minute. But yeah, it's a bit of a beast. But saying that, it's not that heavy. So I shall talk through the bits and pieces on it and give you an overview, the things that I like about it, the things that I don't like. So why did I go for the Chroma 617? One of the main things that I liked about it was the fact that it's got a dark slide and removable film backs. So basically you take the back off, you can compose the shot on a ground glass screen, very similar to large format, and I've used large format cameras before, so I'm kind of used to working that way. But the ability to be able to change the film backs when you want, to obviously put the dark slide in, take the film back off and recompose if the light goes a bit weird and your composition changes. It's a great concept. It's a modular design as well, so all the bits fit together, which I'll go through in a bit. But yeah, that's what attracted me to it. Very simple to use. Everything's controlled on the lens basically, and the helical focus mount, and like I say, with a ground glass screen. So let's have a quick overview of the camera. This is it as a whole. So basically, if I take the helical focusing mount, this is your lens attached to the focusing mount. Focus is here, helical focusing. I've got a 90mm super Angulon lens, which is an f8. So that's that part. This is the body, and then you've got the film back. Push up on these, hold the body. That comes up like that. So that's your main body. As you can see, it's got an inbuilt spirit bubble. I've actually attached one of my own. I've got 2 film backs, so I've got a 3-axis bubble levels on top. I find them a lot easier to control than the one supplied. So this is your basic film back. I've got a 120mm Arca Swiss style plate on the bottom, which kind of spreads the weight out a bit more. And in terms of weight, I think the lens, or the lens board and the body, they come in at around 412 grams, I think. Not very heavy at all. In fact, my Sony A7 is probably heavier than this. So that's your main back. The main body. And you can see it's all felt lined. It's 3D printed. It's like almost like a polymer. It's quite strong. I was quite surprised. I was a bit dubious whether it would be a bit too plasticky, but it's pretty good. You've got a little catch there. So when you put your lens cone on, it's all done with magnets. You've got magnets in all the corners and all the bits here, so you can feel the resistance of the magnet straight away when you put it on. So clip that on. Once that's on, that's not going anywhere. So that's your main bit there. Your film back, as I said before, you've got a removable dark slide. So this is your film section here. You've got aluminium wind-on knobs there, and there's a little window on the back for when you're loading film. But basically, you wind through, and you can see the numbers on the film back in paper as you wind on. So to open the back, just pull out there. Now if you noticed here, there's a line here. I'll talk about this in a bit. You've got your take-up spool and your film, so you load from left to right. These pull up, they're on a spring, so you load your film in there, pull it across, put your leader in, wind it anti-clockwise until your film arrow on the back of the backing paper, put it about mid. There is no mark on this actually, but normally about halfway. Then you can close the film back up and then basically put it back on the camera. So it just slides on like that, clips in. Oh, there we go. Clips in. Once it's done, it's all magnets that hold this together, and obviously with the felt lining inside, it's pretty good. Like I said, I've got a 90mm lens. They do different cones for these that start at about 65mm and go up to, I think it's about 180mm. And obviously the longer the lens, the longer the cone. I'm assuming, I haven't got 180 for this, but I'm assuming it's because it protrudes quite a bit, it becomes a bit front heavy. At the moment this is quite balanced, which isn't too bad. Last but not least is the focusing screen. It's a ground glass screen. It is actually glass. It's got a Fresnel on it as well, which basically gives you a brighter image. Again, 3D printed frame. So basically you take the back off, just put that to one side. This just slots down and it takes up this little groove here. So slot that down into there. There we go. And then you can basically use a dark cloth or your jacket and a loop on the screen to get your focus, obviously focusing with the helical focusing mount. Once you've focused, you can take that off, put your loaded film back on, and away you go. Now, one thing that I wanted to point out was the dark slide. If you completely remove the dark slide, I'm a bit concerned about light leakage as it pops out of this slot. So basically that's why I've marked my dark slide. So what I do is in between shots, I basically lift the dark slide up onto the arrow. So then I know that I'm not pulling it out and risking light leak. I'm going to do a few tests on this just to make sure both ways, basically by taking it right out and obviously leaving it in just to see if there's any light leakage, but so far so good. Those of you with an eagle eye also notice that I've changed the head on my tripod. I'm using a geared head, Benrose geared head. Gives you much more precise control, especially with the horizon level. And obviously using this 3-axis bubble level, you can fine-tune the position of the camera without too much worry. It is a beast. Should have its own postcode, it's so big. It's not as heavy and bulky as the Fujis and Linhofs, but it still attracts attention. I'm quite a solitary photographer. I do like my own space when I'm doing this, so I try and avoid people at all costs. But you know, you're guaranteed at some point you'll get unwanted attention. I'm not particularly bothered about what it looks like. I know some people prefer the Fujis and the Linhofs because they're sort of top class cameras, but if it gets the image, that's the main thing. Now in terms of compositions and finding the shot, there's basically two ways I do that. One is I bought the little clip on which slides on here and just hold that up to the camera. It's basically again 3D printed, but it's you can get one for each lens. So this is obviously for the 90mm lens. And if you hold it up to your eye, you can basically get a good idea of the composition that you want without getting all the camera gear out and focusing and all that sort of thing. So I use that, and I also use on my phone the Viewfinder app, which is available on iPhone and also Android, I think. That's a great app. You can choose different lens types. It gives you film simulations. If you put your camera into wide angle mode, obviously it covers the frame size of a 90mm. I'm not sure on 65. It might do, but I'm not entirely sure. But it's a great app to use to try and find that shot again before you set all the camera up. So I'm just waiting for the light now. Light's going to dip down. I'm up on Dartmoor. Great place. I've visited this location before, so I've always had this in mind for a panoramic shot. Now I'm shooting, I've got a roll of Kodak Ektar 100 and also a roll of Ilford Delta 100. So there's two compositions that I want to do. Now I'm going to play it safe and I'm going to bracket probably a bit. So each composition that I choose tonight, it'll just be one shot. So you get four frames on this. So I've got to try and nail the exposure. Meter wise, I usually use a handheld meter. I haven't got one at the moment. I sold my last meter. So at the moment for tonight, I'm using my A7R, my Sony, in spot metering mode to do my meter readings. So with print film, it's, you know, you've got a little bit of tolerance rather than when you're using slide film. So it should be fine. So the light's improving, but I'm still waiting for it to drop a little bit more, get a little bit warmer, a little bit more side light. So I'm going to set up and get some film through this. There's a bit of a debate whether or not this lens and this coverage on this type of film needs a centre filter, which is basically an ND filter which graduates out from the centre. I haven't got one, didn't come with one, and again, if you check on eBay, the price of centre filters is just ridiculous. I'm not buying a centre filter for like 600 quid. It's just not happening. So I think as long as the light is good, I know slide film suffers from the kind of vignetting effect if you're not careful on this size film. But with negative film and obviously with positive film as well, I think later in the editing stage there is a possibility to remove that vignette. So tonight all I'm using filter wise is a case ND filter, just a 0.6 soft grad over the sky. A little bit bright at the moment. I might remove that when the light gets a bit better and the sun drops, but at the moment it's not too bad. I've focused on the ground glass, composition's all set up. I can stop down my aperture while I'm looking through the ground glass, so I can kind of see, even at f6.8, it's pretty much all in focus, all but barring a little bit over on the right hand side of the frame. So stopping down through the apertures, I can see that by about f22 it's pretty sharp. Famous last words. But I'm going to bet on the safe side, and I'm going to stop down to f32. So I'll take a meter reading later on, and then all I've got to do then is basically dial in my shutter speed, cock the shutter, make sure the lens is closed before I pull the dark slide up, and away we go. I've taken my meter readings on my Sony A7, so I'm getting f22. I'm getting an eighth of a second, so obviously bearing in mind I've stopped down to f32, so that's an extra stop, which is a quarter of a second at f32. So I'll dial that in and see where we go, and I might bracket either side of that just to be on the safe side. If this works, it'll be a miracle, but I think I've done everything right, so we shall soon see. It's obviously a long wait before I get the films processed and back home, and then I'll scan them and see what we've got. I'm going to use the Ilford 100 now, so I'm going to change position. I've got another composition in mind, so I'll see if that works out. Light's gorgeous now, so a little bit of black and white. One little tip that I've just discovered is with Ilford Delta, the numbers on the backing paper are quite faint. Now in strong sunlight it's difficult to see it, so I've had to use my loupe on the back of the camera to see the little window there where the frame numbers go through. Just something to bear in mind. So I'm not too keen on that second composition, not as much as the first one. Let me know what you think, if they come out, that is. So yeah, the sun's dipped down now behind the hill, so I'm losing the light now. So I'll just briefly go over my likes and dislikes with the camera. The likes, the weight, but mainly the fact that you can change compositions, you can use that dark slide, remove the film back, have spare film backs and all that sort of thing. It's a real benefit. Like I say, the weight, it's good and it's bad. It's been very windy tonight, just for a change. So when you've got a light camera, you've got to be really careful that it's not going to tip over, obviously, and it's pretty susceptible to the wind because of the size of it anyway. So that's one issue, which is a plus and a minus. Price, it's very cheap compared to some panoramic cameras, which is great. Now I know the body price is around $425 with a lens cone. The film backs are about $125 in pounds, that is. So yeah, it's quite an accessible system. Now the disc likes, there's a few things. First is the wind-on mechanism for the film. Inside the film backs, you've got a little toggle where the film roll, with the 120 roll sits, but at the bottom there's no sort of spigot, if you like, for it to sit on. So you've got to be really careful when you're loading the film that you get it lined up and it's nice and flat. I had a few issues with that, so it would be nice to have a little spigot inside the bottom of the roll film holder. As I mentioned earlier, the dark slide, it's great, but I'm yet to do some tests on whether or not I can actually take it out without a problem happening. The helical focusing mount, or the focusing cone, it hasn't got any markings on it for infinity focus or various distances, so you've got to use your loop and your ground glass screen to get focus. I'm probably going to put some marks on it, especially for infinity focus, just so I know what's what with that, but it's not too much of a problem. And the last thing was the red window on the back. It's, well, as you've seen in the video today, I had a problem with the light coming across the back of the camera, and I had to have my loop to see the actual numbers on the backing paper, which was quite tricky. Not sure if that could be improved, but it's not too much of a problem, but it's something that I wasn't expecting. I'm going to do some videos later on my scanning techniques, and also probably do a little bit more in depth about the film load and various other bits. So I'm going to wrap up and go home in a bit. 2 rolls in the pocket, ready for processing. I'm going to get them into the lab in the morning, see what I get back, and then hopefully I'll have something to show for this video. Now overall, I was a bit concerned about the frame spacing on the Chroma, but it seems across the 2 rolls that I shot, the frame spacing itself is pretty good, considering it's a full manual wind-on with a little red window on the back to see your frame numbers. It's pretty good. Overall, both rolls, sharpness-wise, again, pretty spot on from what I can see with the loop. So let's talk about the colour. So there's a few mistakes. This first frame, which I think was caused as a little bit of light leakage here. I think I tripped the shutter with the dark slide down and forgot about it. Before shutting the lens down, I started to lift the dark slide, and I think that's what's caused this. But the other frames, the other 3, are fine, so everything was fine there. Exposure wise is all good. So now the black and white. This is the Ilford Delta 100. Again, exposure wise, pretty good. Frame spacing good. Now you'll notice these black blotches throughout the frame. Now that was my mistake. I basically, when I unloaded the film, I took the film out and it slipped. And basically the backing paper, which rolls around the film, was a bit loose. So I think that's what's caused the light leakage. Considering both films, it hasn't both had this on both films, so I think that's probably what's happened. First frame is okay, second frame okay, and third frame, again, this little bit of light leakage here, which is a bit of a problem. But I've got a couple of frames there. This one here, I was using the ground glass screen in the little felt pocket, and I think it came into frame as I was trying to shield it from the sun, so that would explain that. But overall, pretty happy. So let's get these scanned and see what we've got. Well, thanks for watching, and please leave your comments below if you've got any questions or anything on this camera. I'll put the links and everything to Chroma's website below in the description. Any bits and pieces that I find that will be useful for you for this type of camera and this type of shooting, I'll put below. But thanks for watching, and please let me know what you think. I hope you like the pictures, and I will see you on the next one.